and the Jets fall to 4-5 on the season. In studio alongside CBS NFL analyst Ryan Wilson, I am your host Joe Musso, here to break this one down between the Jets and the Raiders, and maybe we only need like the last 10 or so minutes of this ball game to really sink our teeth into. Raiders come away with another gutsy win. They don't light up the scoreboard, 16 points, enough to do it again. Let's start on the winning side and just the changes you've seen in this team over these last 2 weeks.
They're playing looser. They don't seem to be playing with the trepidation and fear and the walking in eggshells that we saw during the Josh McDaniel era that didn't last very long. It feels like Antonio Pierce is the right guy at the right time for this interim role. And by the way, Rich Bisaccia, the last interim head coach to go 2-0. Also the Raiders, maybe the lesson there for owner Mark Davis is you got the guy in-house. You don't need to overcomplicate the situation, but that's a conversation for the offseason. Right now, you're winning with a rookie quarterback drafted on day 3. You're winning with the defense that's getting after it and making opportunistic plays at the right time. We know what Max Crosby can do, but your guy Robert Spillane had a sack in the first half and then had a fantastic hands-catch interception like he was a receiver his entire life to close that game out with just over a minute to go in the Jets' red zone to all but seal it for them. We saw the last gasp effort there, but that was more Hail Mary than anything else. So it's a great win for a Raiders team that was reeling for the first half of the season for much of the Josh McDaniel era last year. And now 2-0, 4-5, and they're not in the playoff hunt, but this is huge steps in the right direction.
I must correct, 5-5 following this win, an even 500, and for everything they've been through in the lack of offensive explosion, it is surprising to say. That is all well and good on the winning side. I think we need to address some layers here on the loser, what this loss means, what they're getting from their quarterback currently, what it means for their quarterback who might be coming back, gave us a target date of mid-December here in the midst of this game. Let's start with Zach Wilson. What is he doing in the final 5 or so minutes that we've seen over these last few weeks that can be extrapolated over a full 60 minutes of football, because he looks effective at times when he's not thinking, just playing? What are you seeing in that tempo, hurry up, gotta go score one type situation that's aiding in the success of Zach Wilson?
No, I think you're hitting on it, and a lot of times you see this with young quarterbacks when they're allowed to not have to think. They're playing in a hurry-up offense, a 2-minute drill. They drop back, they find the target, they throw the football. You're not into reading a ton of coverages. A lot of man coverage you're usually going up against, or even you find the holes in zones, and you rely on your playmakers, and that simplifies it at times for a young quarterback. The problem, of course, is when you play the entire game, you can't do hurry up because your defense is going to be on the field a lot should you go, have a case of the 3 and outs. So the issue, of course, is this. Zach Wilson hasn't been turning the ball over. They've been winning, quote-unquote, ugly, but then you see plays like this. This was at the end of an 11-play drive, Joe, that started with just over 6 minutes to go. You throw the interception with just over a minute to go in the fourth quarter. You're driving. The interception was at the plus 15-yard line. And those are the things that Zach had avoided in recent weeks. And you can't turn the ball over, or you get the kiss face from Robert Spillane there as he celebrates in the end zone with his teammates. And that... The other issue is, you talk about Aaron Rodgers coming back in mid-December, they would have been 5-4. Same record as the Bengals, same record as the Bills, and now they're 4-5, and you wonder if the conversation, even if perhaps internally for Aaron Rodgers, is, okay, let's see how these next few games go. You're playing the Dolphins, you're playing the Bills again, and that could determine ultimately whether you come back to a team with a chance in the playoffs or a team that's rebuilding and looking forward to next year.
We saw the visceral reaction from Rodgers following the interception there by Wilson. Seems that he is on the same page as us right now. It all depends on what happens over this next month or so, whether it's worth it for Rodgers to come back and put his body on the line in mid-December, 4 months removed from a ruptured Achilles tendon. Wilson, again, makes a costly error here in the fourth quarter as his team's driving. They come up with a loss. A hampered receiver in Garrett Wilson also appeared to have some sort of foot-leg ailment throughout this one. How do the Jets maintain a positivity? Zach has talked about it in the past, last week, following the loss and an awful offensive performance, just staying positive, believing in the group. How do you maintain that belief in the face of what they're going through right now?
I think you need a lot more Aaron Rodgers pep talks, right? You need Aaron Rodgers to say, okay, I will be back in mid-December, just hold on. And, you know, I like to joke that hope isn't a plan. In this case, hope actually feels like a plan. But to your larger point, if Garrett Wilson is banged up and perhaps 75% instead of 85 or 90%, which is what he looked like tonight and still balled out, you're in a bad way because your second best receiver, as you sit here, Allen Lazard struggled. Randall Cobb is used infrequently because of his age, and he's losing some off the fastball. It's Tyler Conklin, the tight end. And then you have to ask yourself, how do you build an offense around a banged-up Garrett Wilson and no one really behind him? And the running game has yet to really get going. Breece Hall, 13 carries, 28 yards, did have the big reception, and perhaps you get him more involved in the receiving game, but he's more of a dump-off, check-down option. So there are a lot of questions on the offensive side of the ball. The offensive line has been a perennial question this season. And then you just have to rely on the defense to continue to will this team to close victories in the hopes that Aaron Rodgers is going to be back at some point. But again, if you lose games like this, games that you absolutely have to win with the schedule set up the way it is the next few weeks, that makes that likelihood of Aaron Rodgers coming back, it feels certainly much more unlikely than were they not sitting at 5-4 right now.
236, as we just saw the numbers there on Zach Wilson. $139 of that comes in the fourth quarter, 12 of 19. The lion's share of it on that single drive where he drives his team down the field to get into range. They do not come up with points, and it is another loss here for the Jets. Let's get back on the Raiders for a moment, because 5-5 is something to hang your hat on. You got a coach you believe in right now. The quarterback could be better, obviously, in Aiden O'Connell. It was sort of between regimes when this decision was made about O'Connell. Is this the starting quarterback moving forward? You have a veteran quarterback in your room, and you're sitting at 5-5 with fresh air in the building. Are they best suited moving forward with O'Connell?
Yeah, I think so. And it's sort of weird that Jimmy Garoppolo was signed in the first place, because what I had understood is that they were not interested in signing Jimmy Garoppolo until the 11th hour. They had to work something out with the contract in terms of making it work. Injury-related, of course, he's struggled with these injuries here and elsewhere prior to arriving in Vegas. But here's what I'll come back to, Joe. Is Aiden O'Connell a downgrade from Jimmy G? Yeah, probably. But the other thing is, and remember, for the longest time early in the season, Jimmy G and Devontae Adams couldn't get on the same page. And if you're not getting on the same page with your best player, that's not a sustainable relationship. Devontae was targeted 13 times, 6 catches for 86 yards. So that's something you can build around. Josh Jacobs needs to continue to get involved. Went for 116. That's something you can build around. And again, as I said pregame, you have Max Crosby. You have the defense coming together, playing relatively well as opposed to what we saw earlier in the season. So I think Aiden O'Connell is the lesser of the two evils, perhaps, in terms of the quarterback conversation, because you're getting Devontae involved, because the running game seems to have found life, and you understand that he is less injury prone just because Jimmy G has been such that you can roll with him and have to win. And we've seen this a lot with teams middle below winning ugly, which means defense, running game,
run the football,
and game manager and your quarterback.
I want to talk about that running game here in a moment, but first, the Raiders have allowed under 13 points in back-to-back games for the first time since 1998. Can you name a Raider, 98 Raider?
Jerry Rice, was he there then?
Jerry, that was a little early, I think, for Jerry. Jerry was 2000s. I was going to go late Tim Brown. We're exposing ourselves.
Yeah.
The Jets, on the other hand, it's been a minute without a touchdown as we look at most games with fewer than 14 points since the start of last season. 12 such instances. They have some streaks alive right now. 11 quarters without a touchdown. 36 offensive drives without a touchdown. 198 plays run that have not reached the end zone. Offensively, it's abysmal, and maybe the game script is similar. Run the ball, stop the run. Let's talk about Josh Jacobs, his effectiveness in this run game. We've seen him over these last couple of weeks be more effective as a runner before contact. He was getting contacted in the backfield what felt like every single time he touched the ball. He's got some freer running lanes right now. What are you seeing out of Jacobs and up front in front of him?
Feels like the offensive line is playing better, and that's a credit to that O-line, because they have been banged up, and they've had to replace some starters. Colton Miller didn't play today, and they were still able to eke out this victory. To your point about the Jets not scoring, that is certainly noteworthy, because the other team in New York scored today with Tommy DeVito. So touchdown-wise, that's certainly something to be concerned about at a very high level. But in terms of Josh Jacobs, keep feeding him the ball till he proves that he can't be the guy that you want him to be. We know all the issues they had last year in terms of him playing in the preseason game and what was Josh McDaniels doing. They didn't want to pay him, and then he led the league in rushing. Use him like the NFL's rushing leader from a year ago, and because you have to simplify things for Aiden O'Connell, because he's not going to be a guy that's going to come in and march the team up and down the field. You're going to have to play these close football games. You're going to have to win the turnover battle, even though Josh Jacobs had 2 fumbles, lost one of them tonight, and then you're going to have to win in the end. We saw the big play, Robert Spillane with the interception. Those are the type of ways you're going to win this year, and then you go into the offseason and fix what you need to fix. But now it's a It's not a new regime in a long-term sense, but it's a new regime in that they've turned the page from Josh McDaniels. The team seems to be buying in. I don't know if there's going to be cigars and dancing in the locker room today, but they've earned it. It's 2-0, and it's something different than what they've had the last year and a half under Josh McDaniels.
5 different Raiders did throw a pass in 1998. That included Donald Hollis and Jeff George.
Oh, nice call.
Tim Brown was also an acceptable answer. I will add that.
All right, you got it.
Final word here goes to the man who will get the final word in the locker room and maybe the last laugh as well. The interim head coach right now, Antonio Pierce. He's been spectacular in this first 120 minutes of being a head coach. It only gets harder. Not just from a roster standpoint, but from an expectation standpoint, from the standpoint of keeping a team glued together through what will undoubtedly be attrition moving forward. How do you grade him thus far? And you already alluded to it. A real answer moving forward?
Yeah, absolutely. Rich Bisaccia, you could argue, should have gotten an opportunity to coach that football team after what he did on an interim basis as well. And the team seems to buy into Antonio Pierce. He has a proven track record. He's played in the league, played at a high level, won a Super Bowl, gave the impassioned speech about how his Giants team overcame the juggernauts that were the Patriots, much to Josh McDaniels' dismay, but he was right. And I think the team understands that football is a game that inherently is supposed to be fun. It was not fun the last year and a half. They're winning. They're enjoying what it means to win. As I mentioned earlier, they're not walking on eggshells around the building about being outed for doing something wrong like they're in middle school. So I think that in and of itself. And by the way, we've seen these team leaders, right, Joe? We've seen the Dan Campbells in the last few years. We've seen the Mike Tomlins where the players buy in to what their coaches are telling them to do, and it manifests itself on the field. Now, you could argue that the Steelers sometimes aren't making the best in-game decisions consistently, but that coaching that Mike Tomlin provides those players, they are buying in. Dan Campbell's doing both. He's coaching extremely well in-game, but he's also motivating those players. I get that from Antonio Pierce. I did not get that either in the first tenure with Denver for McDaniels or the last 18 months in Vegas with McDaniels either.
The will to win is back for the silver and black. Another victory here in prime time against the Jets. Ryan, thank you.